Washington's east side weather has always favored the farm. The sun, the arid soil. Then there's the wind, that blustery neighbor that eastern Washington farmers have always cursed, yet tolerated. Then along came a new kind of farmer, those who didn't just put up with the wind, they put it to work. They started slowly, and then they grew. From the far southeast corner of the state to the wind-blown ridges of the Columbia Gorge to the gusty Kittitas County. Wind farms just keep sprouting up.
Well, wind energy is the fastest growing form of energy in the United States. In 2012, it was over 40% of the newly installed generation.
Wild Horse is one of at least 14 existing or planned wind projects in Washington state.
At this wind farm, we produce enough power for about 70,000 homes.
10,000 acres of spinning blades on Whiskey Dick Mountain near Ellensburg. Puget Sound Energy spent years looking for this site. It had just what they're looking for.
The average wind speed is about 8 meters per second, or just about 15 miles per hour is the average.
And we're about to find out what that kind of wind feels like where it matters most. Up there. That big white box on the top is called the cell. And after a nervous ride on a two-man elevator, that's where we found ourselves.
This is the top of the windmill, 260 feet up. That's the hatch that goes out on the very top. There's nothing but sky, wind, and blades up there.
Taking that last step through the hatch is like taking a spacewalk, except here, gravity is a serious concern. We lock in our safety lines.
It's so scary. I mean, it's beautiful and it's thrilling, but it's scary.
And then stand up to face the fury.
I can tell you, it is very windy up here and unpredictable, but these farms know how to handle that. These blades automatically adjust like airplane wings for all the different winds up here. And look at all of them working together to make power.
So the hole in the cell will actually turn to face the wind, and then the blades will pitch to maintain a constant RPM.
16.3 RPM, that's the sweet spot. And to achieve it, they need dependable weather forecasting. The wind industry invests millions of dollars into studying everything about their sites, the geography, the meteorology, and the history. Then they factor it all together.
And what that ends up doing is that makes wind a very dependable and reliable resource in the next 5 minutes, in the next hour, in the next day.
Seattle consultant 3Tier says it can routinely predict the next day's wind with 90% accuracy. That's the kind of certainty any farmer would love to have, and that's why so many new wind farms are going up. As for me, I'm coming down.
I am coming off the windmill. I tell you, it's fun, it's cool, but I want to get down.
They seem to come out of nowhere. Herds of migrating weeds being pushed along the prairie. The old-timers call them Hanford's Terminator winds.
Terminator winds, and no kidding, it put about 3 to 4 inches of sand on our whole lawn.
Harold Copeland got his first taste of the Hanford wind when he rolled in from Colorado back in 1947. He'll never forget stepping off the train.
We thought it looked pretty grim.
Many of the thousands of workers who came to Hanford with the promise of good jobs and pay shared that first impression.
Heat, the winds, the isolation.
Professor Robert Bauman hears it a lot as he records weekly interviews with Hanford's fading resource, its verbal history.
You can have reports that tell you certain things, you can learn information, but you don't get those human stories. You don't get someone telling you, boy, when I got off that train in Pasco, I almost turned around and went back home. I didn't know why I came here, right?
I said, I'll give it a year or two.
Joe Soldat never left. At 87, he has plenty of memories, but fewer and fewer people to share them with. He remembers the giant cafeterias where workers flowing in from all over the country got to know each other.
You stand in a long line and get your powdered eggs. And
He remembers his first job working in the hot zone.
my problem was I was a little bit accident prone. I kept scraping my fingers and they decided you don't belong in radiation zones. So they put me in environmental monitoring. The best thing that ever happened to me.
He would check out areas to see if workers could enter safely.
Stuck the meter around the corner and it went off scale. I said, forget it. And I forgot it.
Joe and a lot of the other workers didn't even bother to buy a car in the early days. Didn't need one. Hanford had a heck of a transit system. Buses like this one ran constantly to and from the site. You met your wife in there?
Yeah.
Joe met his wife here, raised a family,
Must have had something going for me.
and is healthy today, even after volunteering to drink iodine-exposed milk just to see how it affected his body.
Well, I always like to refer to these people to say, yeah, that nuclear energy, that's pretty good stuff.
It keeps you healthy.
It made us last a little longer.
Some of Joe's research helped set safe limits for his co-workers like Harold Copeland, who earned just about every award and honor he could during his long career.
I look back on it proudly, and that I did work for our country, and I enjoyed working there, particularly the men that I worked with.
Thousands of men and women shared the early Hanford experience. But people and memories are fading away as time just keeps rolling on. In Richland, Gary Chittim, King 5 News. She is a force of nature, a supercharged bovine battery, and she produces the power all day long. She's part of an endless supply of steaming energy on its way to a thing called a digester.
It's a 16-foot deep tank plumb full of manure and additional substrates that cook at 100 degrees for 21 days.
Methane is born, enough to power a massive engine that produces enough electricity to power 300 homes. The Tulalip Indian tribe invested.
It's a good source of baseline renewable energy. We're producing power 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
And now the Snohomish PUD is buying power.
We knew the contract was up, the price was right, and it was a win-win for us and for all the parties involved.
Snohomish PUD likes the idea of locally produced power made from waste products from a nearby dairy. The actual dairy is about 1.5 miles away, but the pipe runs straight here, and it's actually flushing right now. 30 to 50,000 gallons of, you know what. But this swirling pool is not restricted to manure. Restaurants are now sending their leftover grease here. Butcher shops send blood. Distributors send their outdated wine and soft drinks. The Qualco digester is now burning up the bacteria that used to flow through our sewers. And producing energy is just a bonus.
We didn't go into this to make power. We went into it because we wanted clean water and efficient agriculture.
After the power process ends, the farm is left with tons of nutrient-rich, bacteria-free fertilizer that is spread on fields to grow more food for her so she can make more power for us. Near Monroe, Gary. Central Washington in February, and something unusual is happening in this fruit storage facility. Workers are cleaning up after millions of bees spent the winter here. The body count is normal. The bees did well.
They were absolutely gorgeous.
It's a far cry from the last time we were at the Olson Honey outfit in Yakima. The bees suffered massive die-offs. They were part of a nationwide crisis that still threatens the food supply. Then last year, when the Olsons opened the hives after wintering them in California, the wheels came off.
When they got to California and opened them up, they were dead.
They were convinced pesticides in California killed their bees. So the Olsons decided this time they would rent an empty fruit locker near Yakima and keep the bees at home. They'd heard of other beekeepers having success that way. But fruit storage facilities have something that other winter storage facilities don't. They use gases to protect the fruit when it's in here. So the Olsons thought that might be important to monitor as they protect the bees. They noticed the carbon dioxide levels in the hives were rising in the indoor atmosphere. They tried to ventilate it at night, but the levels were still high. But when they opened up the hives last month, guess what?
It's just like night and day. It's kind of like, hooray, they're still alive, they're still excited.
Did the Olsons' casual monitoring of the CO2 open the secret to healthy bees? Excited Washington State researchers think maybe it did, and they're now conducting their own tests on the effects of CO2 and indoor wintering for honeybees.
Never, ever, ever knew that the results were going to be what happened.
In Yakima, Gary Chittim, King 5 News. The Georgia Strait. It's where the great water bodies of the Salish Sea meet, and what appears destined to become a new avenue on the route of international energy trade. It's also where Walter Young's father taught him to fish 50 years ago.
Taught me to be at one with the water, and I like it, and I don't like people messing it up.
Just as Young was teaming up with local environmental groups to fight a proposed coal export facility here, the news comes out that oil from central Canada may soon be headed this way.
A lot of people don't know it, but right now there's actually a tar sands pipeline that comes to Vancouver.
That pipeline has steadily increased its flow over the last 3 years, and now, with the possible death of plans to ship Canadian tar sands oil through the U.S., there are plans to expand it. Pipelines do have some positives. They're underground and they take away a lot of the risks of moving oil across the land. But where the land ends, the crowded waters of Washington and Canada begin. And if there's bigger pipe and more oil, that means more tankers.
And there's also a proposal on the books to almost triple the volume going through that pipeline.
Chinese trade officials visited Canada this week to discuss the deal that would mean a dramatic increase in traffic through the Haro and Rosario Straits, which frame the San Juan Islands. A traffic increase that has preservation groups and Walter Young worried.
Guaranteed disaster. It's only a matter of time before one of them crashes into another.
Opponents of the coal transport facility feel they have a good chance of beating it. But the Canadian plan is much more tricky and may be a battle they won't even be allowed to fight. In Bellingham, Gary Chittim, King 5 News. It starts with a long walk, and along the way, some warning signs.
Bear scat. Be on the lookout. We got bear spray.
What bear wouldn't love this little section of the Tahuya River in a remote pocket of Hood Canal?
Well, it'd be nice to see some silvers in here, yeah.
This team is here to count the bear's favorite food, or what's left of it.
Yeah, we're going to sample this fish.
The Hood Canal Salmon Enhancement Group is on carcass count.
Smorgasbord.
Following their instincts and their noses to find, sample, and count remains of spawned-out salmon in the Tahuya.
Ooh, this is a ripe one.
Yep, it's a census for the senses. Each dead salmon tells a story, from its scales.
This is to age the fish. They grow like rings of a tree.
To its skull.
Ear bones, the otolith, we can tell hatchery origin. They do an imprint, I think it's based on temperature. It looks like a female over here.
These are hatchery fish gone wild. Some of them are still alive, carrying the eggs of the next generation and waiting to lay them. Their discolored and battered skin shows the ravages of the run. These are the final days of the miraculous life cycle of a salmon. All this hard work, fighting the currents, all the climbing, and that surprise fish under the foot.
Oh, there it goes. Did you see that?
Are all part of the job in the endangered species field. This goes beyond just the health of fish. An entire ecosystem depends on them coming back each year. Take a look at this. That was a tasty meal for a bear that must have sat right there and enjoyed it.
Grizzly Tough Pepper Spray.
One more essential item in the toolbox. The team tries to tread lightly in the bear's kitchen And after they take their scales and ear bones and measurements, they put that carcass cookie right back in the jar. Near Belfair, Gary Chittim, King 5 News. There are still plenty of high winds flowing through the Day Island neighborhood here in the city of University Place. But earlier today, those high winds teamed up with high tides, and they had a serious problem. Residents tried to get up and down their flooded streets while the high winds and high tide were still sending waves over the bulkhead and into homes.
2 hours ago, it was coming through the front door, running, and the back door, and just running through, and you could see waves coming in here.
Waves were coming into waterfront communities all over Puget Sound. In the Des Moines neighborhood of Redondo Beach, the waters flooded streets and knocked out power to an aquarium. It was touch and go for the sea creatures. No power, no pumps.
We have a large amount of tanks, big aquariums full of marine life. And with the loss of power, we can't get down there to get the pumps going. There's no power. Without water circulation, the animals are going to die from lack of oxygen.
Workers created a bucket brigade to keep the oxygen and nutrient-rich water going, while electricians worked on getting generator power to the pumps. The sea creatures were showing serious signs of oxygen deprivation when the electricians found a way to bring up the power.
We have water?
Tragedy avoided, but the Highline Community College Marine Center took a serious beating and will require expensive repairs. So will several homes and streets. But for most people, it's just going to be an inconvenience and a long period of cleaning up after the big storm that combined a high tide and high winds to make life miserable. In University Place, Gary Chittim, King 5.
Is 597 uniform, come up 13101, Victor. 13110, ready, ready. Papa, this is Delta Papa.
It's difficult to even stand up in this. The rain is coming in sideways. The surf is kicking up. Perfect day for a swim. The violent Columbia River bar creates the perfect training conditions. Swimmers are dropped into the frigid, boiling surf. They are becoming part of an exclusive fraternity that can snatch back lives the sea has claimed.
Let's go ahead and push her down the hill a little bit.
By this time tomorrow, these cows will be down the road, a lot closer to home and a lot farther away from the wolves. Okay, everything is set up on the side of the mountain, so now it's time to get all of the workers backed off. They're ready to blast.
3, 2, 1.
A winter's worth of stored energy is suddenly freed. It's an imminent avalanche, prompted by humans, to happen on human terms. The Yakima people say if you look closely at Mount Adams, you can make out the shape of a horse. Their legends say the Creator put horses here to help the Yakima people. And should they ever become lost, the horse will always lead the people home. Seabirds like pelicans get their poison on the open water. With the sudden crude landfall, shore and marsh birds are now stepping along the edges of disaster. I'll give you an idea of just how persistent this stuff is. I've got it all over my fingers that I took off the grasses over there. Take a look what happens. Should come right off. It's in the Gulf water. This stuff will not come off of my fingers. It will not come off of the feathers of birds or the skin of the reptiles that live in here. getting it off the marsh plants before they spread it to the wildlife and birds seems almost impossible. Officer Tucker searches the treetops. The public is demanding action.
Part of protecting and serving. Ready to fire.
The nightly game of cop and crow has begun. The department has given up the old method of shoot to kill
Firecracker round.
and now uses non-lethal noisemakers in hopes they can make downtown Sunnyside so unpleasant for the crows that they'll just look for somewhere more peaceful to roost.
Yeah, one thing about working with Gary is that he took you everywhere. Eastern Washington to the mountains, out to the coast. All the way from the bottom.
As I make my way down, if I was to hit my head or be overcome by fumes, the operator could quickly pull me out. Workers venture down here to look for clogs. What I'm seeing is a pretty steady flow.
To the top.
And after a nervous ride on a two-man elevator, that's where we found ourselves.
This is the top of the windmill, 260 feet up. That's the hatch that goes out on the very top. There's nothing but sky, wind, and blades up there.
Taking that last step through the hatch is like taking a spacewalk, except here, gravity is a serious concern. We lock in our safety lines.
It's so scary. I mean, it's beautiful and it's thrilling, but it's scary.
And then stand up to face the fury.
I can tell you, it is very windy up here and unpredictable, but these farms know how to handle that. These blades automatically adjust like airplane wings for all the different winds up here. And look at all of them working together to make power.
He would go everywhere, except for that one place.
Hey, Gary's leaving.
Gary? I don't know Gary.
Is that the guy over at King? Oh, geez. I haven't seen him in a long time.
Usually out in the field.
Yeah, not here in court.
Hey guys, Gary Chittim's leaving.
No way.
Gary's leaving?
No more court for him? I mean, we're waiting for Joe McEnroe.
I mean, he's going to miss all this fun. Gary owned King County Courthouse. What do we do?
How will we survive? What are we ever going to do?
Who's that? I've never even seen him in a courthouse. He's usually up in a tree or something earthy like that, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's that guy who does all that stuff?
Hiking boots, right?
You know what? The last time I saw him, he was doing a story on a house right in front of my house, and I didn't even think to do a story on that house. And he came over to interview me.
Interview you?
Yeah, and then he saw that it was me, and he didn't want to talk to me.
Well,
So I'm not sure I really want to talk to him.
See, this thing is on.
He loves everything environmental, and it's in his title. He is a specialist when it comes to working on environmental stories. But I think perhaps his favorites are the ones where he gets close, sometimes a little too close, to animals.
I conferred with our furry friends, man to animal. Think of the amazing repartee. If I could walk with the animals, talk with the animals, grunt and squeak and squawk with the animals, and they could talk to me.
Gary, I think I can speak for most of the photography staff that going out and working with you was always an adventure. I never knew if I was gonna step on a rattlesnake, get covered up in an avalanche, get mauled by a bear, or get attacked by a wolverine. My friend, I'm gonna miss you. You're a great friend, a fellow adventurer. I wish you well, and I hope that we can just get out in the mountains again, outside of work, and just chill out and have a good time. I'm gonna miss you. Bye, Gary.
the earth died this week because you're leaving. I mean.
So our jackets form our identity, and for Gary Chittim, this is what he wore most of the time while growing up in Wyoming. Then he moved to the Northwest to become a reporter here at King TV and got one of these. Now he's losing this, and he's going to be wearing a stinking suit, even a tie that I refuse to put on. So Gary, this is your future, constricted, formal, very businesslike. Good luck with that. And by the way, I do have one Gary Chittim joke. So Gary Chittim walks into a bar. What does the bartender say? Why the long face?
Hey Gary, I am going to miss you so much. I'm going to miss your awesome environmental stories, your wit, your humor, your amazing writing, but most of all, I'm going to miss your smile. I'm going to miss seeing you every morning and saying good morning to you. I wish you the best of luck in your new adventure. We're definitely not going to be the same around here without you.
So the weather's going to be fantastic, and we'll have that covered, and Tracy's going to look at the traffic and everything, and it's going to be awesome, and we just have Dan Casuto and Chris Ingalls to assign.
No Gary Chittim?
Nope.
Where's Gary?
Gary's on vacation, like most of the staff.
Wait. Isn't that Gary right there?
That is Gary.
Goodbye, Gary. We're going to miss you.
Hey, Gary. I suppose this is not the first time someone has said that you've seen the light. You've worked in the dark tunnels of broadcast journalism for decades, and that light you saw at the end was one of hope, was one of salvation, and it was LED. Seriously, I wish you all the best in the world. We're going to miss your environmental stories here. They were always so very fascinating, and our broadcast is going to be the less without them. But I know you've got going to a great job. It's going to give you time at home in the evening. All the congratulations in the world, and let's still have that beer on the weekend.
I'm okay.
Gary, I just cannot thank you enough for everything that you have meant to this organization. You are just such a consummate professional in terms of your knowledge of everything to do with the environment, your ability to report stories. You're a great writer, a great presenter, and you also have this interesting little streak where you like to chase a good crime story, run after the bad guys down the street, talk to the cops, and be Action Jackson on the street. We wish you the best. We know that there's great things that are going to happen for you still in your career, and just want you to know there's always a seat for you here at the King table.